Hello, and thanks for tuning into a very chill review. I'm Heffy G, and you know me. Today we're going to talk about Cyberpunk 2077, a game that exists. Other folks have said a lot of things about the game and the hype surrounding its release, and the opinions are all very scattered. Some people like to claim that the game is doo-doo, and its technical issues stop the player from investing themselves in the world of Night City. Others claim that, bugs aside, the game is a breathtaking experience that really raises the bar on what's to be expected out of future open world titles. Me? I just like that I could give my character a monster dong. I feel like it really adds to the immersion. See, I expected a lot out of Cyberpunk, and when 7 PM rolled around on December 9th, I went to town on this game. I've done a couple playthroughs, messed around with oodles of side quests and gigs, and I feel like I've seen most of what Night City has to offer, and the whole experience has left me, well, let's talk about it. This is a very chill Cyberpunk 2077 review.
Take your dough to make more dough, just to see that dough make some more, cause it's
The level of hype surrounding this game was staggering. If this game's hype train was an actual train, it would be one of those fancy bullet ones you see in Japan, filled with a bunch of craze-starving weasels. I haven't seen hype at these levels since GTA 5 in 2012. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the biggest game releases of the last decade, easily. This was achieved through almost Machiavellian levels of social engineering. Do you think CD Projekt Red was gonna half-ass the marketing of a game featuring Keanu fucking Reeves? The man's a living meme. They were gonna full-ass everything they did for this IP. The developer's last release, The Witcher 3, was considered by many to be one of the greatest RPGs ever made. They then went on to win over the public through tireless quality assurance and amazing free DLC and paid expansions. CDPR has a kind of reputation you just can't buy. Every morsel of information and concept art we got about Cyberpunk 2077 made every game that surrounded it look bad in comparison. Multiple reload animations? Why is this just now a thing? We thought to ourselves as we watched the hour-long gameplay reveal they presented to us in a petri dish. Before the release, because they stressed that this game is a truly next-gen experience, I literally had no idea what to expect. Would we be able to choose our own way through the story? Could my V's Jackie survive and kill Dexter DeShot? Well, showcase the death of a main character in a pre-release trailer, right? CD Projekt Red's stellar reputation, along with the quality of the promotional material they gave us, built Cyberpunk up to be one of the next great games before it was even out. The next classic title, spoken in sentences alongside Breath of the Wild, BioShock, and Fallout New Vegas. Well, maybe it'll be mentioned alongside New Vegas, but at the moment that's only because it's... yeah. You know the story of Icarus, right? That dude who had wings made of wax that died because he flew too close to the sun? I forgot where I was going with that, but Cyberpunk 2077 is buggy as hell. When it works, it's pretty fun, if for nothing else that the hit feedback is good and the animations are interesting. But this game doesn't really like working too much. To be fair, I never really caught a hard crash or run into any game-breaking bugs in my 100 hours in Night City, but like the shimmer of the sun on the sea, you can almost always see one on the horizon. My hype-affected dum-dum brain wants to say that these add charm and character to the game in regards to the amount of memes generated by them. But my logical, tax-abiding brain says that these are clear signs of shitty management and unrestrained ambition. When CDPR put out The Witcher 3, it blew people away. Cyberpunk's teaser trailer released 3 years before the release of The Witcher 3. That means that CDPR had 5 years of the public stroking their ego before the release of Cyberpunk, and I think the big willy brain affected the development process a bit. I just get the feeling in the pit of my stomach that CDPR wanted this game to be more than what it ended up being, and I don't necessarily mean just in terms of stability. For example, why can't I get into some open world cop chases? They show off a max attack unit in both the teaser trailer and the intro of the game, but you're telling me I can't coax them out to fight in the open world? You never even deal with them during the main story. Did they just, forget to add a police presence during free roam? It's like they focus so much on making sure the narrative and missions actually work that they threw all the open world dynamic gameplay into the wind. There's two ways to play Cyberpunk 2077. A right way, where you play along with the story and roleplay being a V in Night City, and a wrong way. And that's not at all how it's supposed to work if this is trying to be a next-gen open world experience. I know Geralt of Rivia didn't really rustle too many feathers with the authorities in Novigrad, but in Night City, we're supposed to be cyberpunks. High tech? Low life? I find it really hard to believe CD Projekt Red didn't think we'd want to mess with Night City's finest in between missions. Regardless, the game is buggy as hell, but playable. Unless you're on consoles. Godspeed to all the PS4 players out there. The comparison between GTA 5 and Cyberpunk 2077 goes a little bit deeper than just the effectiveness of their hype machines. People think the comparison comes about because you spend a lot of time in both titles driving around and listening to the radio, but it's more than just that. Both games try to develop a feeling of rebellion in players through tactical use of advertisements and philosophizing. Los Santos and Night City are just both shitholes you'd love to spend time in. The feeling you get just walking around and taking the city in are almost worth the game's price tag alone. This is where the bulk of the 8-year development cycle went to, you could just tell. Everything in Night City is layered and built with purpose. The sense of place is palpable in this place. You can almost smell some of these environments, and let me say, they probably smell really freaking bad. Besides the visual spectacle, Cyberpunk also features an infectiously grimy soundtrack. I'll agree with G-Man Lives that some of the tracks are kind of grating, but when they land, you feel it.
Bring it up! What? You guys both have boners now. What is going on? Wow!
The game's visuals are impressive, regardless of the fact that it runs like shit, but I was left wanting more out of the story. I'm not going to go into late game spoilers, but be warned, if you want to experience Cyberpunk 2077 Gerber Baby fresh, maybe cover your ears up and hum during this part of the video, because I'm going to cover some of the early game setup. You've been spoiler warned. In Cyberpunk 2077, you are V, a merc doing work with the twerk of your choosing. You could be either a dude with a long schlong or a lady with a little feminine wiener, and anything in between. But the only thing that changes is your vocal performance and who wants to bang you. The rest of the story is constant. Depending on your chosen life path, you get a different opening tutorial, and later on you get the option of exploring more lore within certain conversations, like tribe politics as a nomad and places of interest in the city as a street kid. Really, your life path adds a little bit of a different flavor to your V, and if you like to get into your character's head while you play like I do, you'll appreciate it. Anyway, upon choosing your V's life path and getting through the prologue, the game will always default to you and Jackie being best buddies that are looking for Sandra Dorset. Merc work comes easy for guys with your skill set, and if the Eurodollars fit your lifestyle, so why not, right? Saving your client from the scavengers acts as your introduction to Cyberpunk's combat. You're free to use stealth or hacking if you like, but choosing a show of force brings attention to the game's tendency to make V a glass cannon kind of character. Enemies take a lot of shots this early in the game, but the player takes much less persuasion to hit the floor. As a result, you're incentivized into taking your time moving through hostile areas, sticking close to cover, and because of that, you get to enjoy the amazing attention to detail they put into every nook and cranny of this game. I'm not gonna lie, inching your way through firefights trying to pour loads of rounds into opponents as you try to avoid dropping in 3 or 4 yourself makes for an investing campaign progression. Because you have to pour so much ammo into enemies, and because you're pretty fragile yourself, the game really makes you consider your surroundings in the open world, and when you're in a shitty neighborhood in Night City as a low-level merc, it really does feel like you're in a shitty neighborhood, at least on higher difficulties. Later on in V's perk tree, you do get the chance to start doing extreme amounts of damage and dropping foes in less shots, but earlier on, everyone's a little spongy. I really do prefer this approach versus Fallout's tendencies to turn both enemy NPCs and the player into tanks, so put me in the camp of people that like Cyberpunk's combat. And that's not even counting the sexy reload animations. I mean, would you just look at these? Pretty groovy, right? After pulling the rich girl out of the freezer and handing her over to Trauma Team, you and Jackie part ways for the evening. V heads to his apartment to get some shut-eye, and the next morning hits the streets with plans to check himself out at a Ripper Dock and meet up with Jackie Boy to talk about a new job opportunity. At this point, it's hard not to take notice of all the lore you're swimming around in. After all, this game is an authentic entry in the Cyberpunk universe as designed by Mike Pondsmith, so it's got like 40 years of history to draw on for its style. Ripper Docks, Trauma Team, Choomba. At first, it's a lot to take in, but realistically, as cool as it is, it's like putting chocolate sprinkles on chocolate ice cream. A Ripper Doc is a doctor that specializes in body modification, and Trauma Team is an ambulance run by a SWAT team. All the Cyberpunk stuff is cool as fuck, don't get me wrong, but it's all funky set dressing for a story about the streets. Take V and put him in DeLorean and send him to Vice City in the 80s, and he turns into a regular guy for hire from the GTA series. That sounds like he's doing a Jesse Pinkman impersonation. Anyway, Jackie Boy tells you got a meeting with Dexter Deshawn, one of the top fixers in Night City. Deshawn goes on to let you in on a heist for a mysterious piece of tech. Apparently, Arasaka, the major paramilitary corporation of the Cyberpunk universe, has gone on to invent a form of immortality by creating digital constructs embedded on data shards. Dexter's client, Evelyn Parker, who's also requested to meet with V, has sought out Dex's help in stealing this shard from one of her clients, Yorinobu Arasaka, the impudent prince of the Arasaka Corporation. To aid in the caper, Deshawn tried to buy a little robot spider dude from a gang of regular robot dudes called the Maelstrom, but a recent power struggle has left the state of our fixer's purchase up for debate. V is released into the Watson district of Night City to quell the two concerns. This acts as the player's first taste of the driving and decision making in the game. The driving is kind of dookie, there's a decent sense of weight, but steering is way too sensitive and you have to schedule slamming your brakes days in advance of when you plan to use them. Choosing between jobs works just like in GTA. Multiple missions are introduced for you to complete, but the order doesn't really matter too much, and you always end up at the same crossroads afterwards. Really, the lack of agency in the campaign is one of my bigger gripes for the game. You don't really get to change much outside of some flavor text, and a couple of interactions, and even sparing supposedly significant characters doesn't really change much outside of... Son of a bitch! Even sparing supposedly significant characters doesn't really change much outside of, again, some added flavor dialogue. For example, when you head into the Maelstrom meatpacking plant... meatpacking... For example, when you head into the Maelstrom meatpacking plant, you're always going to fight out of it, be it against Maelstrom themselves or Corpo assassins. These are set pieces that CDPR intended for players to engage with in a certain way. And they're fun in their own right. But remember, they marketed this game as a role-playing game first and foremost, and omitting stuff like this just makes it feel like an action game with the occasional speech check.
Piece of shit.
their fucking style, I'd say.
Before or after getting the flatbot, V meets with the lovely Miss Parker and gets put through a brain dance she took featuring the location of the forthcoming swindle. Judy, I love you, but this is my least favorite Cyberpunk gameplay aspect. Brain dances suck. This is the most Hideo Kojima thing in this game, and the dude himself is in the bitch. Brain dances are long, unskippable cutscenes that you gotta sort of sort through for clues to show you can follow directions. First time through, when you're figuring out what's going on, great. Really, fun times were had by all. Every single subsequent playthrough, these things just drag on, dude. I don't know about you, but I hate unskippable cutscenes, okay? Call me simple if you like, but they're straight dookie. If they were dead set on these being engaging, they should have remembered that they were making a video game and really up the density of the information you can glean from these. But honestly, I just feel like that'd be asking too much. If it were me, I would have just left these to be played entirely in first person or scrubbed them from the game entirely. But I guess if they're engaging enough on your first playthrough, whatever, keep them in, right? Information and Robot Spider Buddy in hand, you meet with your crew in the afterlife to discuss the details of the heist. You and Jackie are heading into Konpeki Plaza, Night City's home away from home for the elite, under the guise of weapons dealers selling the same spider bot you'll be using to sabotage Yorinobu's security system, allowing you to pocket the relic. Fuck, that's a hard sentence, dude. Why'd I write it? Allowing you to pocket the relic shard and make a fat stack of addies. Great plan! Up until the part where unforeseen consequences leave V dead but not dead in a ditch with a douche in his dome called Johnny Silverhand, slowly killing him. To be continued. Dum dum dum. You want to know what happens next? Go and get the game. Look, I've been really critical of a lot of stuff so far, but I genuinely like the story, and its progression, and it's cool, and it's interesting. You know, the set-piece missions may stay constant, but you can tailor your V's path and motivations to your liking, and it's super freaking cool to play through these plot lines. I did like 2 playthroughs and got 2 completely different endings and experiences. A former Nomad V who asks questions about everything and becomes friends with everyone is a wildly different experience compared to a bitchy ex-Corpo V who's short with all her conversations and alienates everyone around her. There are stretches of this game for hours where it's nothing but conversation, and between the immersion of the beautifully grimy world and the absolute thickness of the lore, you just don't get bored. Hell, even Keanu Reeves manages to captivate long stretches of conversation with the quality of the dialogue in this game. I mean, I really don't want to downplay Mr. Wick's acting ability, but Keanu's strength in the industry has always come from his more physical roles. The way Johnny's written in the game paints him as a genuinely nuanced character with more meaning behind his subdued delivery, and it works really well after you get over his initially rigid sounding performance.
Who you work for, start talking.
Fuck.
Fuck.
There's a lot of stuff holding the game back from perfection, don't get me wrong, but the Cyberpunk 2077 experience is a mostly positive one, regardless of the technical issues. Don't let those Twitter kids scare you. I love this game, but it still let me down. It was always going to be impossible to live up to the hype that CD Projekt Red built around this project, but Lord knows we all hoped for it anyway. Maybe that's why people were so upset that it ended up being just a really good game. And in some circles, a really shitty game. And in other circles, a travesty, worthy of being sued for. We wanted a world-changing experience. A step forward. And in some ways, this is that. but with an anchor tying them down to last-gen hardware and a commitment to giving us something of quality, we got this version of Cyberpunk 2077. A game that'll be remembered for having a train wreck of a release and occasionally being compared to Hitler, even though it's still a remarkable experience, and also just a video game. What's up with that? Why are they comparing Hitler? I'm sure that there's a parallel universe out there where CDPR released one of those famous yellow pages apologizing for the cancellation of last-gen versions of Cyberpunk. And in that universe, maybe we would have gotten to save Jackie. But still, I really enjoyed my time with our universe's version of Cyberpunk 2077, flaws and all. And it is definitely worth getting at full price, warts and all. Even though its plot is basically the same as 1995's Keanu Reeves' vehicle, Johnny Mnemonic, minus the Cyberpunk dolphins, which I think is worse than Johnny Mnemonic. I mean, Cyberpunk dolphins. Come on, that's fucking awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody!